and share my screen. While I do share my screen though, I'm curious just to get a sense of who all is online. If you could put in the chat box kind of affiliation, whether you're secondary, post-secondary, a community partner, industry partner, a state agency, or something else I might have missed. It'd be great to understand who the blend of 48 participants are that are on here. Great. Good to see some university folks too. I love it. That's a great mix all over the state as well. So I'm going to go through quite a bit of information in a fairly short period of time. Dominique, it is 10:30, right? Is that what I'm targeting?
Yes.
Okay, great. But I do welcome questions. Feel free to put them in the chat. I'll try to catch them, or maybe Dominica can let me know if I've missed something. I'm glad to try to answer things as I go through. I am going to provide kind of high-level overview of kind of lay of the land of workforce, where we're at in the state and the opportunities, and then the university's role in developing Alaska's workforce, and hopefully provide you also with some resources that might be useful. Good to see you, Brenda. So what is kind of current status of workforce development at a high level? We have had kind of a flat school age population as far as growth for about a decade. And that means there's less coming into the workforce pipeline overall. And then what's the impact of our actual working age population? We've also had, it's tied to our net migration, which how net migration is defined by Department of Labor is there's less people coming into the state than are going out of the state. And so we've had a decline in people that we can access for workforce. And that of that demographic, which is in the 24 to 60 some year old range, the largest group that has been migrating is our working age population. So it's really created a bit of a challenge to have access to the workers for employment across many of our industry sectors. The one area that has been growing is our senior population in Alaska. I think more people are staying here. There's multiple generations here. Even if they are leaving for periods of the winter, they are staying as a resident of Alaska at a higher rate than they have in the past, and it's actually grown a lot. The impact on workforce is, I'm sure many of you have heard, the graying of our workforce as those individuals retire, which many did during the pandemic. Some retired earlier than planned for various reasons. That has had an impact also as they've taken their skills and historical knowledge and experience out of the workforce. So all that to say, we've had a pretty leaky workforce pipeline, and it's going to take all of us really to work on addressing that for what's to come. So the opportunities ahead, though, are really, really tremendous for Alaska. I heard recently, and I'm going to repeat it from Nils Andreasen with Alaska Municipal League, due to all of the federal funding coming into our state, what he shared is that we have a generational opportunity that deserves a generational effort. And I wholeheartedly believe that. My hope for us as Alaskans is that we can look back 10 to 15 years from now and say, hey, we came together in a really collaborative and meaningful way to set Alaskans up for success and ultimately our state. So all of this federal infrastructure funding that's coming in the state is going to happen over the next 5 to 8 years. and really provide tremendous opportunity for all kinds of jobs. And even though the infrastructure funding is focused on construction and broadband as two key examples, even our ferry system and others, there's the Deepwater Port in Nome, which has tremendous opportunities for the northern region. There's all of the employment opportunities that are on the periphery of the creation of those types of jobs. Wherever there's people, for example, you need healthcare, you need teachers. All of these industry sectors rely on information technology, administration and finance. You need accountants, all of those pieces to make this work. So if we can come together and set Alaskans up for success, which means getting them the skills for these jobs so they can be employed, our state really can be in a much better place. And there is a lot of statewide collaboration happening. Currently, there is in the works to have this cross-industry workforce development plan updated that hopefully will be finalized at the start of next year. And the value in that is you think about construction, even oil and gas, mining, as well as maritime, and then the telecom or broadband expansion. All of those are using similar skill sets and hiring for similar positions. So as we can think about getting Alaskans trained for those cross-industry skill sets, then the job long-term, once the infrastructure projects are complete, there will be legacy jobs to maintain all of this, and really it'll benefit Alaskans if we can think in that kind of cross-industry mindset. And this plan getting revamped will help provide some guidance on that. So how's the University of Alaska helping to address the workforce needs? We are Alaska's largest workforce provider, and we are Alaska's public university system comprised of 3 separately accredited universities and with their distinct missions, and then 13 community campuses and also some satellite sites that provide access points across all 6 economic regions in Alaska. And you can see that represented here on this map. There are over 400 programs offered across the university system. And I'm curious if you also want to put in the chat box, how many, just a rough guess of those programs, do you think are short term? So think associate's degree that can be 2 years, or certificates for 1 to 2 years, and even occupational endorsements or intensives that can be less than a year. How many of the 400 do you think are in that shorter term range? Just going to pause for a second and see what the answers are. We'll see if anyone puts some answers in the chat. There we go. Brenda, good guess. 225. Dominique is going high. I like it. 300. So you're really close. It's definitely more than half. So roughly around 200 and change. And I bring that up because, one, a lot of these jobs that are coming up on the horizon tied to the infrastructure projects are geared more towards those short-term training opportunities. That's good news for Alaskans. And I also bring it up because often when people think of the University of Alaska, they think traditional college. And while we do offer many traditional college degrees that are really important to Alaska's workforce needs, you think about teachers, nurses, engineers, and so on. We also offer these short-term opportunities. And I want people to understand that and think of the University of Alaska and our 3 universities and our community campuses that are carrying out that community college mission in our state and offering those short-term opportunities. So how we approach workforce development at the University of Alaska is kind of, you can categorize it in 3 buckets. There's those pre-college programs, which you commonly hear of, dual enrollment opportunities that provide those pathways to transition between secondary and post-secondary. And then we also have all of the academic and degree programs, and the short-term, even non-credit programs that are aligned to help meet Alaska's workforce needs. And then the third bucket, as individuals maybe complete one of our programs, but then they need ongoing professional development, whether that's for licensure or relicensure, or just to upskill to advance their careers, they can come back for professional development opportunities. This is one of my favorite visuals of pathways, and it's utilized a lot tied to Perkins funding at the secondary level, but it really shows the importance of those on-ramps and off-ramps. And if we can help Alaskans either upskill or reskill for the jobs that are coming up, and even if it's short term and they take an off-ramp to get a job, then come back and use hopefully a stackable credential to obtain additional skills and advance their career or increase their employment opportunities. That's how we can all work together to kind of create those pathways and opportunities for Alaska. So why education? What's the value? I love these stats from our own Department of Labor and Workforce Development Research and Analysis Unit. And it really does show that education pays. By and large, the more education people have, the higher their wage outcomes are. And these are actual wage outcomes of Alaskans currently living and working in the state. And the value of that obviously is helpful for the individual and for families, but it's also valuable just as a state to help our economy overall. As people have higher wages, statistics show their health improves, they need less support, crime in communities goes down, the overall health of our communities and our economy improves. So I'm going to dive into some specifics on workforce development outcomes across the university systems, programs, and our graduates. I've presented on this before to this event, but I want to make a note that these reports have recently been updated. So if this looks familiar, you'll see some differences in them. There's always opportunity for continuous improvement, and I'll point out some of the changes. If you haven't seen them before, I hope that you can access the QR code, take a look at them in more detail. I won't have time to go into each of them too much today, but I really am hopeful they'll be useful to you and your work, and connecting with our programs. One of the differences that we made in this round of changes is we added 2 reports, one in hospitality and tourism, and the second was in law and public safety. And then we tweaked some of the others, like we previously had one for aviation, and this time we expanded it to be more encompassing of all things transportation. And I want to note again, research and analysis at Department of Labor is who we partnered with on these reports. So they all represent actual graduate employment outcomes of our graduates working and living in Alaska. So this is what they look like, an example report. Each report on the first page highlights usually 3 areas tied to that are important to that industry sector. And the wage outcomes of those graduates, and then how those graduates are helping boost the Alaska hire rate. And then the lower right hand of that first page highlights the wage outcomes at employment outcomes at 1, 5, and 10 years. And then on page 2, you can see, thanks, Dominica, you can see where those graduates are working. And then what the hiring trends are for that industry sector, and I should say where they're working in actual industries, what the hiring trends are, and then where they're working in the six economic regions in the state. On the third page, there's a summary of all the graduates represented in that particular report. And then on the final page is a summary of the actual programs represented of those graduates. So if you want to get a sense of what programs are tied to which industry sectors, the final page is a nice place to look at that, and it highlights by university, so you can hone in on where those programs are being delivered. Here's a summary of all the aggregate data from all 11 workforce reports. So there's almost 27,000 graduates represented. And one of the really exciting changes that we were able to make in this round of updates is highlighting outcomes between the 2-year and below, those shorter term programs, and our more traditional bachelor's degree and above or graduate programs. And you can see both in the table on the top as well as the graph on the lower right that there's really strong earning potential in both categories. So meeting Alaskans where they're at, providing them an opportunity based on their interests and maybe the time they have to devote to education, there are great opportunities both short term or for those that want to go longer term. And they have great employment outcomes either way. And they certainly, when we train our own, it makes a tremendous difference in our state. That's a 15-point percentage difference of training Alaskans for jobs in Alaska that stay and work in Alaska versus the comparison of all workers, which we know we have a lot of seasonal workers that come and go from our state, and that's important. We need that too. But for those year-round jobs, ideally, it's definitely beneficial to train Alaskans for those. Here's some demographics as well. Across the board of those 27,000 graduates. And no surprise in some ways, our working age distribution, we have a lot of non-traditional or what we call non-traditional students, which means they maybe they did start right after high school, but they left and came back and are working part-time or maybe full-time. And that's definitely a larger portion of the students we're serving. I also think it's interesting that when we think about recruitment of a workforce into Alaska, the university plays an important role in that. So while we serve 58% of Alaskans who graduate from high school in Alaska, we're also recruiting individuals into our programs from other places in the country and the world who end up staying and working in Alaska. And because of our small population, that's a good thing. We need more people here in both those categories. And this is just a graphic of where these nearly 27,000 graduates work in Alaska. And it's represented all 6 economic regions. So I'm going to look at a few specifics in the reports. I'm going to go pretty quickly with the time remaining, but I put construction at the top because of all the infrastructure projects that are coming. It's really an important sector right now. It's going to be growing tremendously over the next 5 to 8 years to meet all of these infrastructure project needs. And again, a lot of times when people think of the University of Alaska, I don't know that they always think we have construction programs at the level that we do. Apprenticeship is certainly a really important part of meeting the construction workforce needs, but we also complement that in our degree programs with programs like construction management. So those that maybe complete an apprenticeship, they want to move into management positions, can go through our construction management program. And that's one example. We also have engineering, welding, construction trades technology, which is shorter term, And you can see the earning potential here is really significant across the board. We've been partnering quite a bit with the construction industry because they are just really looking under every rock for workers, and developed this video to help expand awareness of those opportunities and what training is available. So I'll share these slides with Dominica so she can, or I know she's been sending them all out so you can access the video, but please feel free to share it. You can link to it. It is there to use and help increase awareness of these opportunities. Another way we've really been collaborating for many years is around fisheries, seafood, and maritime, tied to the Alaska Maritime Workforce Development Plan. This is a multi-billion-dollar sector for our state, and really important to help meet those workforce needs. And I just put this in here to highlight the importance of that sector, and recognizing there's a lot of partnerships between AVTech, the Department of Labor, and a lot of our industry partners to help collaborate and work together in meeting those needs. If you go to maritimeworks.org, there's some incredible career awareness resources there that can be used. And those link to the available training tied to the 23 priority occupations recognized in the plan. And here's our fisheries and marine science programs and their outcomes that are really also tied to that maritime plan. And then transportation, which includes the programs helping to meet the workforce needs for the Alaska Marine Highway System. This transportation report also includes aviation and logistics. If you think about moving goods all across our state, that requires logistics. So this report is kind of encompasses several different areas. Administration and finance, I mentioned, is needed across every industry sector. And there are so many opportunities in Alaska for working, whether it's mining or broadband or healthcare, that utilize administration and finance programs. And same for information technology. The one comment I'll make is this area is going to be growing tremendously. You can imagine just with technology advancing, but tied to broadband expansion. It's really going to depend on the IT sector and helping with the expansion and making all of that work. The other area is renewable energy. When you think about solar and other energy sources, that also will be leaning on the IT sector to help implement that workforce. Can't say enough about the importance of our teachers in Alaska, and we have 3 schools of education across our university system. And you can go to teachalaska.org, which has it's a really great entry point into exploring those pathways. Healthcare, I mentioned earlier, wherever there's people, you need healthcare, and we offer 60 programs across clinical and behavioral health. Often people think, especially on the clinical side, nurses is one of the key ones. But I want to impart that it's really important to think there's so many opportunities in healthcare, from rad techs who help do the x-rays to dental side. There's just a lot of opportunities for those interested in healthcare, but the maybe nursing is not maybe something they have time for, while nursing is really important and we need actually so many nurses. There's also just a lot of different pathways in the area of healthcare in general. Law and public safety, from wildland firefighting to actual police departments. There's to the law side, from working in a clerk's office, we have programs to help try to meet those workforce needs. Hospitality and tourism, it is one of our largest industry sectors. We do not have a lot of programs for it because many of the jobs they don't require traditional post-secondary training, but the programs we do have are really important to this industry sector, like our culinary arts program. Mining and oil and gas, we have two reports, or a report each for those sectors. You can see the high earning potential in both these sectors. That's not a surprise. They've always had high earning potential, really great opportunities for those interested in not office jobs typically, except those that are supportive, like the administration or finance ones I mentioned, and are open to shift work and working in various parts around the state, but really great opportunities. And again, those cross-industry skills that can apply to other industry sectors. I'll just leave this here if you access these later, these slides later, to highlight the different ways these reports can be utilized. We update them every 2 years, but the goal is to highlight outcomes and certainly help advocate for the value of education. But for those working directly with Alaskans, trying to guide them into opportunities, it's really to enhance awareness of what those opportunities are. To briefly blow through a couple slides and just highlight, I know that sometimes funding is a barrier for education. Obviously, federal financial aid can be extremely helpful, but we also offer as a tool within our university system, Alaska 529, that's a tax advantage way to save for education. So you can just look up Alaska 529 to find more information on that. And then we partner with Department of Labor to ensure as many of our programs are possible on the eligible training provider list that then is connected to federal funding through the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act. And this funding can provide wraparound services and is administered through the job centers. And so really encourage, if there's barriers to employment and accessing training for employment, to partner and utilize your job centers all across the state, and you can access our programs through there. Career Coach, I don't have time to go into it today, but you can access it through the QR code. It's a really robust system tied to careers in Alaska that are linked to all of our programs. AVTech is also linked in Career Coach. And it's very intuitive, easy to use, and a great way to help students, Alaskans, navigate the careers tied to their innate interests, and then how to find the associated training. And I made it to 10:30. So Dominica, thank you so much for the opportunity. And I welcome anyone to reach out if you have additional questions or want to partner with us in some way. As I said, it's going to take all of us, and I will welcome the opportunity to work with you.
Terry, thank you so much. Yes, it's 10:30, but I do have a quick question. So you mentioned that there are, or showed us that there are over 400 programs at University of Alaska, but but 317 are on the eligible training providers list. Why not all of them?
Well, eligible would be the key word there, but that's a great question. WIOA funds bachelor's degree and below. Mm-hmm. So any of our graduate programs are not eligible for that source of funding. And then all of our programs that are on there, they have to meet certain requirements. And we're consistently working to help hit those targets. Sometimes they get missed for various reasons. But fortunately, when they come off the list, we can reapply to get them back on and hopefully meet those targets to be eligible. So the majority of our programs that meet the WIOA requirements are on the list.
Thank you. because that means there's possible funding for
Yes,
to
correct.
fund these programs. That's good and important to remember. Well, Terry, thank you so much for your time. I shared the links. I tried to catch the QR codes and share the links in the chat box. If we don't have any questions, and I'll make sure the recording will be available and eventually your presentation as well. I thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Dominica. Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.